Hello, everyone, and welcome to Breaking Barriers webinar from the PGMOL. My name is Pippa Monique, and I'm delighted to be your host today. I hope everyone's doing well. This session is part of the organisation's wider work around equality, diversity, and inclusion in a series of webinars taking place throughout the year. We're really excited about sharing so many fascinating stories and experiences. The focus of this discussion today will be around parenting within refereeing, hearing from some truly inspirational people within the game. But before we get into that, here is Mike Riley, MD of PGMOL, with a few words to welcome you all.
Thanks, Pippa, and welcome to everyone to the first PGMOL Breaking Barriers webinar of 2022. Today's session is all about parenting in refereeing. At the PGMOL, we are proud to give opportunities to talented referees and officials, regardless of their circumstances. What matters is ensuring that all referees in the country are supported and are ready to take to the field of play. Greater diversity in refereeing will benefit football hugely, so it's vital that we are delivering it, and we will. This session sees us focus on parenting in refereeing, exploring the challenges and demands of referees who have families. The objective of this session is to allow an engaging discussion, which we hear from our colleagues who've coped with these demands, taking time out of being with their loved ones, and making the necessary steps to get back into refereeing when they're able to. It's important that we hear how these demands affect both our male and female officials and how they provide care and support to their families to make sure their careers continue. In our panel with Natalie, Ben and Emma, we have three parents who will be able to offer a unique perspective into balancing home life with football. We are really proud of the contribution that they and all of you make to our game. We will understand better the challenges that are important to address, and I hope that these are relatable to all of you watching. Breaking Barriers is a fantastic platform for us all to be able to learn and establish a wider understanding across all areas of the profession. So it's great to be able to hand back to Pippa so we can hear it firsthand from Natalie, Ben and Emma. And I hope you enjoy the show.
Thanks, Mike. Right, now let's get into introducing our special guests. Today, joining us on the panel, we have Natalie. Natalie, how are we?
Hi, I'm good, thank you, Pippa. Thanks for having me to be part of this programme today. I am a select Group 2 assistant referee, which means I run the line on the EFL and the Championship, and I'm also an assistant referee on the FIFA list and have been since 2007.
Amazing. I'm sure we'll get into some amazing stories from all of that. Also joining us is Ben. Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Pippa. Thanks for having me. Yeah, Ben Speedie, second year Football League referee, and I've got just a one baby, 8 months old, so very fresh, and yeah.
Congratulations. It's never too late to say congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And last but no means least, joining us is Emma. Emma, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm Emma Guest. I'm from the Essex FA. I've been a referee for 11 years. I am a grassroots referee. I love the local parks. And I have two children, one girl and one boy. And I wouldn't swap them for the world.
Amazing. I think at this point, I'll introduce myself as well. My name is Pippa Monique, and I am a freelance TV presenter, mainly featured on YouTube and BT Sport, and you can catch me during Sky Sports transfer windows. And I'm also a mother of two little boys, troublesome, but lovely. All right, now let's get into this, because obviously I know firsthand being a parent is in itself a very difficult job, full-time, as everyone may say. But what is it like being a parent and working in football? I'll start with you, Natalie.
Yeah, so obviously it's difficult, but I think it's the same as any career that you want to take. It's about finding that balance, doing everything that you can to be a good mum, a good parent, and give the best to your job. So for me, when I had my first child, I've got two children, sorry, I didn't say. And when I had my first daughter, I wanted to kind of make sure I came back into refereeing to kind of make her proud, and also to carry on being me. But then the more she grew, I I kind of learned actually it wasn't just about me making her proud. It was about the wider messages that I was teaching her. So, for example, it's normal for her to see me go out training or exercise. And in fact, sometimes they come to the fields with me. It's normal to have a healthy, balanced diet. But also, when she was about 3 or 4 at playgroup, they did a sports day. And after they did the race, they split them to play. They split all the children into teams to play football. And one dad said to his son, "Oh, you don't want to be on that team. There's girls on it." And she turned around. So she's only 3 or 4. She turned around and she went, "Girls can do football. My mummy does football." So I kind of like really reflected back from that and thought, I'm actually giving her and her friends a really important message, you know, not just about being fit, being healthy, but actually that girls can do these things that you can achieve if you work hard.
And that's amazing that you said that, because it happens so much within football, especially over the years. I mean, now we're seeing more inclusivity, but you see that you don't see many women referees and many women in football. And it's only now that the women's football is getting a larger platform, is such in the WSL. But what is it like, Emma, for you being a woman in football? You mentioned you've been so many years within the game.
Yeah, so I've been a referee now for 11 seasons. During that time, I've had 2 children. When I very first started at Essex, I could count on one hand how many female referees there were. And I think there was only 2 or 3 of us that were sort of the age of having children. So, you know, it was quite a big thing when you to see a female out there. And, you know, I can only just reiterate exactly what Natalie said, you know, especially like after I had my daughter, you know, I was excited to get back out on the parks because I wanted to show that you can do it, because at that time, there wasn't a lot of women's football on the telly and it wasn't mentioned on social media, etc., etc. So it was important that I did go back out there, and also just a chance to be me, because, you know, when you have a child, it can be a bit of a shock at first and you're so used to being able to do your own things, and sometimes at first it can be a little bit of a monotonous routine. So just to go back out there and get on the parks and just be myself just did me the wonder of good. But also, like, for my kids as well, you know, it is important. And you know, then there's been times recently I've had experience where I've been on the parks and I've cautioned a player, and it's actually turned out that later that week I've had a parents' evening. It was actually my daughter's PE teacher. So it was quite interesting that had happened. And
how did that parents' evening go?
All right, actually. He said she was really good. I was actually quite surprised, because she's more academic, I would say, than to do with sports, whereas my son is more the other way around. He's more into his sports and being academic. So
the teacher didn't hold the yellow card against you. Was it a yellow card, did you say? Or was it
it was called, I cautioned him. He was for persistently infringing the laws of the game. We'd had a few challenges and he kicked the ball away. I thought, you Wally. So he was cautioned. And then when I actually see him, he just sort of looked at me and I looked at him. I was like, "Oh, hello, Mr. Patton." He was like, "Oh, hello," like this. And he was like, "Oh, yes, Isla's getting on very well." I was like, "Oh, thank you very much." And then sort of after the parents' evening, I was like, "Have you paid your fine yet?" Yeah. He's like, "I'm just waiting for it to come through." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then, so it was nice, like a bit of humanity. And it was just nice that you could see that, you know, you were a parent out on the parks, because I think sometimes people forget that a referee is a normal person as well.
Yeah, coming on to that, there's so much to unpack there. We'll get back to that. But then, like, just touching on, you know, people sometimes forget to separate the referee from, you know, human life. Like, you have a life out off the pitch. Do you think there's a perception of what a referee should be like? And if so, how do we challenge that?
It's probably ingrained from years. People just see this referee going out on a Saturday at 3 o'clock and making decisions, and then that's it, really. But we can challenge it by doing things like this, coming on. We are humans. We do have a personality. We do want to strive to be the best. And we do have a life as well, you know. I'm quite fortunate. I actually was a teacher until pre-pandemic. And that's given me that work-life balance now, in terms of balancing refereeing along with home life, especially with and again, speaking to many other colleagues on the circuit, they've had a bit of a adaptation to post-COVID situations now, where family is very important, and it's a nice release away from the pressures of refereeing.
Do you know what I would love to know? What is it that inspired you personally to get into refereeing? Because I'll give you a personal story of my own. My son also plays grassroots football. He plays for a team, and on Sundays he has his matches. And there was a time there wasn't a referee available, and they asked one of the parents to be a referee. And because everyone knows I love football and I'm into football, and I would obviously understand the rules, everybody nominated me to be a referee, and I just was not up for it. I just didn't want to do it because I've witnessed games, whether it be in the Premier League, wherever it could be, even kids football, referees always get, some level of abuse, or no, that's not a yellow, that's a foul, that's a penalty. And I just wasn't up for the challenge. What is it that made you want to get into refereeing? It's such a job that there's so many opinions thrown at you during the game. I'll start with you, Natalie.
So my story, so when everyone that knows me will watch this, they'll be laughing because it's the same story, obviously, from me. So I was 14 when I started refereeing, and my dad was a local referee. And my friend, who was also called Natalie, actually, had a paper round, and she got £12 for having this paper round. I then said to my dad and my mum, I want a paper round, I want £12. And my dad was like, there's no way you're going to get up in the morning. Oh, I will. He said, and I'm not driving you around. I said, I will. Let me, I want £12. And he said, why don't you come to referees meeting with me and start to be a referee? I was like, well, I don't really know much about football, because back, then girls didn't really play football or participate in football, and there was no referees, female referees. So he said, come to the meeting. He said, you pass your course, you get £12. I was like, I'm there. So that's my story. And then kind of as I started, people perhaps didn't welcome me into refereeing. I felt that there was barriers put in my way. So I felt that I'm going to prove that I can do this, and I still want my £12 every week. And then it just, I don't know, maybe the others can agree with me, but refereeing, it just becomes part of your life. It just becomes the normal thing that you do. And that's why it was really important for me to carry on with this important part of my life after I had my children.
You mentioned there were the barriers. Like, what type of barriers did you have during that early part of your career?
Gosh, so things like there being no changing facilities. So it was a case of, okay, I go with my kit on, and then I turn up at the ground and I walk out onto the pitch. Clubs perhaps not being welcoming of a female match official. So they might say, well, there's no, you can't come in and like check the boots. We used to have to check the boots then. So it was me, okay, let's get the lads lined up outside, and I check the boots. So it was me as a 14, 15-year-old with my dad, having to think of different ways that I could go out and officiate that game of football to make it possible for me. And then coming through, grassroots people, and again, these guys will have had the same experience as me, coming through the same pathway, that it's just, when you're out refereeing youth football regularly, you then progress into the men's football and you become a familiar face. So you're not so much of somebody that they don't know, that it becomes a little bit more accommodating, a little bit more acceptable. And I think this links into what you said before about how do we change people seeing us as, just a referee. And Ben touched on it by doing things like this, by us not becoming a minority, by celebrating and, really emphasizing the fact that there's different people from different backgrounds with different stories to tell that are actually going out at every level of football refereeing. And let's celebrate those so they don't become a minority, they become the norm.
Yeah, it's true. How about you, Ben? What was your story of getting into refereeing?
There's a couple of stories. So I played football till I was about, say 19, 20. But I did my refereeing course up in Newcastle. What inspired me to take a refereeing course was two stories, as I said. So one where I was coming back from an injury when I was playing, and probably a bit excited, came on the field to play as a substitute, and I made a crunching tackle and I got cautioned. And I asked the referee, I said, I won the ball. And she said, no, it was a female referee, and I didn't take too kindly to it. So I was, And then the second story was, again, I was getting cautioned again. I stopped a promising attack. and the referee asked for my name, and my friend walked past me and said my name's Bart Simpson, and he got sent off. So again, just little things like that. And I thought, well, if this is what's going on, I would like to understand a bit more about it. And I started refereeing down in Liverpool when I moved down there for university, and and kind of learned my trade down there, as you would say.
I mean, we touched on it briefly, and I'm sure we'll touch on it again. You mentioned there was a female referee in your game. When you were playing, do you feel like anytime you had a woman as a referee, the teams were not as accommodating, or is it just a one-off situation?
It was rare. I think there was one female referee when I was playing, and she was a very good referee. But it was very rare to see, as has been discussed. And you see more and more of it nowadays, which has obviously become more of a norm. But yeah, we just saw it as a person doing the job, and again, making the decisions. I didn't, because I was only, say, a 16, 17-year-old kid then, didn't have any biases or anything like that.
Yeah. And Emma, how about you? How did you get into refereeing? Remind me how many years you said now? 11?
So 11 seasons I have been out on those parks, in the rain, in the wind, in the snow. So for me, my story is that I love football, always have done since I was a kid, but I cannot kick a ball for toffee. I tried, but I just could not do it. And, at that time, when I was at school, girls playing football wasn't really a thing. It was like a once in a blue moon, you might get a session and, something you might do in PE. And, when I was a kid, I used to always read the paper back to front. It was always the sports first. And, I used to go to local games. And then one day I was sitting down in my early 20s watching Match of the Day with some family, and there was a decision the ref had made, and we was all arguing about it for ages. So then my cousin got a bit hot-headed, and he said to me, well, if you think you can go and do better, go and do it. So I thought, you know what, I'm actually going to do that. So I contacted the Essex FA, and I went on the course. I was the only female. I walked in, everyone looked at me like I'd gone to the wrong place at first. And then I qualified, and then you had to do your 6 games. And I never forget my first game. It was an under 15s girls game over in Leigh-on-Sea, and we started the game. I was so nervous, but the parents couldn't be nice enough. And then I had to abandon it at 70 minutes because then this almighty thunderstorm broke out. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to get in trouble for this? But then I went out and did some more games. I was at the age where I could do men's football as well. And my first season was really tough, but I just loved it. I don't know what it is. Like, whenever I ask any of my colleagues, and I'm sure Natalie and Ben will agree, when you're at home or you go to the local parks and you go for a run or whatever on a Sunday or a Saturday, and you've got the day off, you hear a whistle. It's like a calling. I don't know. It's really weird. It's really weird to describe. I don't know what it is, and it's just like, oh yeah, I love being a referee. Like Natalie said, it's just part of life. And in Essex now, we do have a large amount of female referees, ones that are coming through. When I first started, like I said, I could count them on one hand. And my first season, I got absolutely destroyed. But like Natalie said, I started becoming a familiar face on the parks. I went through promotion scheme, got to level 5, and rest is history, really. Been lucky enough to be in some big stadiums. And
like where? Tell us. Stadiums such as?
So last year I reffed at the Valley. So I was at Charlton. I did Sellers Park, and I was lucky enough to be one of the officials for the BT Sport Hub Cup, which was at Wembley.
Nice.
So there was me, and it was such a good day. We had women's football, we did men's football, and we did a bit of 7-a-side, and it was great because it was all grassroots teams, grassroots managers, grassroots referees in this amazing stadium. We had, we had Robbie Savage was there, Glenn Hoddle, a few others were all there, and it was just great to have all grassroots people in such, the best stadium in the world for me, being at Wembley. Like, it's just, I don't know if you've been lucky enough to be there yourself, but when you walk out on that grass and you just see all those seats, and it's just, and all those people, and it was just amazing just for someone from grassroots, like us, rest from grassroots, being able to go out there and do that, because it was, it's important that it's not always just about the professional game. It's about the grassroots as well, and so it was amazing. But yeah, that's my story on refereeing.
Love that. Talk to us about juggling refereeing as well as like the professional life alongside family life. What's the day in the life like? And also if you have to juggle a day job as well, what's that like for you, Ben?
Yeah, I say I was a teacher pre-COVID and was traveling up and down and around the country when I was a 2A referee, so the National League referee, and tried to fit in training before work. So I was getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go to the gym to get a session in, and then getting to work for 7 o'clock, staying. And as you're probably well aware, teachers have work very unsociable hours. So I was there probably till 5, 6 o'clock, coming back, trying to get some good food in us. And then, so I kind of made the decision, obviously, post-COVID now, to focus on in terms of promotion to the Football League, where I can balance it more. So I've got a much better work-life balance, and obviously I had my little girl 8 months ago, and that's given me that flexibility now. Well, the unpredictability of when she needs attending to. So I can go and train during the day instead of having to worry about going to work. Do recovery sessions. I can plan my food. There's all these little 1%, you say, to try and keep on top of things, which I probably would have found a lot more difficult if I was a full-time teacher as well. And hats off to, I'm going to speak to lots of other colleagues, I say, around the circuit. I've got a massive respect for them who manage to balance it in terms of family, work, and everything else that goes with it, because it is quite a demand. Trying to tie everything in is it's very difficult, because of the pressures of with football and with your job and with family, because you want to try and appease all three. And I'm sure we'll find some more stories with Emma and Natalie as well.
Yeah, Natalie, what is it like juggling it all?
Yeah, so it's difficult. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not. I mean, when I had my first daughter, I was a teacher as well. I taught at a college, and it was a case of me trying to, get her at nursery, get to work, use my lunch hour to train, to get back in the classroom, to go and pick her up from nursery, to get the tea ready, all these different things. And I did that maybe for about 18 months, and then I just thought this isn't going to work for me. So I was quite fortunate that I then went to work for another company where I teach apprentices. So I'm still teaching, but it's a lot more flexible. I get to work from home, and they're really supportive with my refereeing. But it is a really difficult balance. This now the women's refereeing has come under the PGMOL, and there's actually a little bit of money for us now as FIFA officials. That's being used to help support us. So that means that I'm hoping soon I can reduce some time at work to give me a little bit more time to balance and make sure those training sessions are good quality training sessions, that I'm recovering right, that I'm eating right, that I'm preparing for my games well, and also that I'm around for my children, which is obviously really important.
Yeah, of course, got to get that work-life balance, right, Emma?
Yeah, true. Mum guilt is the worst. Mum guilt can be, or parent guilt. It can be the worst. Like if your kids need you and you've got to run out the door. I actually work full time. So I'm a grassroots ref. I work full time. I have 2 children. Working from home at the moment, obviously due to the pandemic. I work for my local authority, so they're very accommodating as well, able to help me with, and they say it's important that I am able to go out and still be refereeing, because just for well-being as well, not just for being able to balance everything, but just for my own well-being. It's good to be out there on the parks. It's 90 minutes where all you've got to worry about is those 22 players and that ball. So you sort of don't, you don't worry about everything else as much, if you know what I mean. You don't need to worry about if Isla's had a breakfast, or if George is dressed, or if the house is, there's a bomb gone off in the house, or whatever, So, but it's difficult. You just got to be organised. My husband is unbelievable. Like he's unreal. He supports me all the time. Always has done. My family, in-laws have always helped me. but my kids have grown up with it. They don't know any different. They're not used to me not being out on a Sunday morning or a Saturday afternoon going to do a game. That, you know, it's part of life. And like Natalie said, you know, refereeing is not, it's not like an extra thing. It is part of your life. It is part of what you do, day in, day out. You know, if it's, sometimes I'll go for a run. My kids come on their bikes, you know, over the parks. If I'm over a local park and I'm refereeing a game, my husband will bring my children, maybe come and meet me at half time. They can cut, sometimes they come and watch, they might kick a ball around and stuff like that. So as much as, you know, you do get a bit of mum guilt as well, if I'm having to rush out on a Sunday morning, you know, and they want you to stay in bed with them, it's good as well, because then they get to come, and they, you know, they were lucky enough to come to some of the big stadiums with me and stuff like that, and realise what you do. You know, my son was running around at one point with one of my medals on, and it was just like, he was like, look what my mummy's got. And he was just like so excited. So yeah, it's hard. You just got to be organised, especially with the school runs, after school clubs, if they attend any, or any of on a weekend. But I don't know, it just becomes part of life, really. You just, I think sometimes you don't realise how much you put into it. So yeah, it's just part of life, and I love the way that it just all sort of manages to run together, and it just means that I get a chance to still be me as well, not just mum all the time, if you know what I mean.
What was it like I know it's now you're learning how to juggle it all and work around your timetables and organise. What was it like in the very beginning? You know, just after birth, let's say, what was it like returning to football? What was that moment like?
So I had my daughter 2014. With her, I refereed up to, I think I was about 18 weeks pregnant. I don't know why I stopped that early, really, because I had a good pregnancy. I think when it's your first, you're a bit more sort of conscious, if you know what I mean. I'm sure Natalie will probably agree with your first, you're a little bit more sort of conscious about it. When I was refereeing a lot, being pregnant and just after pregnant, there was no real guidance for county FAs, because it was a once in a blue moon. They might have a female referee that's had a baby, etc. But to be honest, with my daughter, I was excited to get back out there, just to have a bit of time to myself, just to have a bit of space from the routine, especially when you've got a newborn, when you've like even up to sort of 6-7 months. It seems to be such a routine all the time, and sometimes can be a little bit of a hamster wheel, and you can't get off. So then when you got to go and do a game on a Sunday morning or a Saturday, I was just like buzzing, because I was just like, oh yeah, I get to like go out, bit of exercise as well, and just a bit of time for myself. So but yeah, it was tough with my son. After I had George in 2017, my daughter was a natural delivery, whereas George was a C-section. So I did struggle with George. I think it was having the two kids as well, having a section, and just trying to get back into the swing of things as well. Especially with George, I sort of had him, and then the 6 weeks holiday hit as well. So I had them both at home all the time. And after I had George, I actually just went and did a bit of 5-a-side and 7-a-side, just to sort of get back into it, build a bit of confidence up. And because it was knackering. George didn't sleep that well either. He was a terrible sleeper. That's why I was an angel. George just didn't sleep till he was about 18 months old, I think. So he was just like running on fumes all the time, you know. So, but yeah, I remember my first 11-a-side, I actually did a bit of running the line out on the Isthmian, and I felt like it did me the world of good, to be honest with you. But it was tough, but it was like the best thing I could have done. But I know people worry about, you know, when you've had a baby and getting back out there and stuff like that, but that things, you know.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Ben, as well, there's also the struggles on your half of having to get that paternity leave, let's say, and returning back to football just after having a newborn. How is that?
Yeah, so I was quite fortunate that I'd say Ava was born in June last year, so during the Euros, funny enough, obviously the delayed Euros. So it gave me that couple of months before the season started, before, you know, so I could get routines in place ready for when August the first weekend in August for the season started. So yeah, I was quite fortunate in that regards. And I know even in the first couple of months, I asked Mike Jones if I could be kept fairly local within the northern area of the country, just in case I needed to be home. So very supportive from the PGMOL from that point of view as well. Yeah, and even still now, Emma's touching it there. You know, it does take a lot of organisation, but it is a release as well. You know, we need to get out and just for your own mental sanity, just to go and do what you enjoy doing. And we have the challenges of, you know, especially now because I'm going up and down and around the country where I do require some overnight stays, and that's taking some adapting. And you want to be at home at the same time, but you know you're doing it for the right reasons because you want to try and inspire your son, your daughter, and be the best parent you can be. So yeah, that's kind of, I was fortunate to start in terms of having a summer baby in mid-season and coming back and starting in August.
Yeah, it's great that you had that support as well. And Natalie, you mentioned that you started refereeing at such a young age, so you've transitioned from a young teenage referee into an adult and then into a mother. Then what was that process like in returning after becoming a mother?
Yes, I'm glad that you've come back to me on this, because I think it's a really important message to get out there, particularly for girls, women that are pregnant and wanting to come back into refereeing and also to progress. So I know that there's been talk about how if you're a female referee and you have a baby, you can't progress through the men's game. But I'm actually kind of going to counter argue that every single time. Because when I had my first daughter, I was on the National League as an assistant referee. After having her, I was promoted to the Football League as a referee. After having my second daughter, I was promoted to Championship. So I kind of want to counter argue that there is room for promotion once you have a baby or two babies. It doesn't stop that route for you, that pathway opening. Yeah, it takes you out for a season, but it doesn't stop that progress happening. So for me, because I was kind of so we had Amy Fern, who'd had a baby, who was involved in PGMOL before me. Then I came through, and so I actually reached out to Amy in terms of training. What do I need to do? How can I get back to passing my fitness test, because we have to pass fitness tests at our level. So Amy was great, sent me like a back to run training program that she'd used. Once I then got up to, and actually, so I used my back to run program with the buggy. So quite lucky, I live in Blackpool, I'm on the promenade, best place for me to run. We'd load the car, I'd load the car up when it was due to be nap time, drive to the promenade, and this all started in like the February. My first one was born in January. So we'd all be wrapped up, get the pram out, get onto that prom and just run and just do the back to run program, get her back out, run was over, back in the car, home, and then she'd wake up and then we'd have to think about the feed. So I think it's a really important message that we say about us supporting each other, not just women supporting each other, but match officials supporting each other to get back. Then once I was back and I could run for, I think it was like 30 minutes continuously, I then linked in with the PGMO and the sports scientists to help me with training programs that I could use to make sure that I was going to be in a position to pass my fitness tests. After my first daughter, I passed my fitness test after 3 months. And my second one, I took a little bit longer because I wanted to spend a bit more time with her. It was 4 months. But then, you know, all that support is there. We all must use each other's experiences, use the sports scientists that are there to help us, but also as a team. So things like when I was then back out refereeing, I was still breastfeeding. So, you know, it was finding a way to not only find somewhere to change, but then how could we accommodate, you know, me in terms of breastfeeding. And actually that's why it's really important that this is a message for all the referees out there, that we need to support each other. And actually the lads that I work with were really great, and we found ways around, you know, if we had to share a changing room for changing, I would go in separately anyway. I just perhaps needed a little bit longer. So I think there's you know, there's lots of topics we could touch on with this.
I love the level of commitment, and that's such an inspiring story as well. I mean, the fact that you got straight back out there and was doing the runs on the promenade, I'm just picturing it now, thinking, wow, absolute high levels of commitment. But you touched on the fact that there's so much, you know, the barriers that you had being a woman as well. But why do you think women are underrepresented in the profession?
Well, I think that, you know, we've mentioned it a little bit before, that if you don't see those people out there, then it becomes, do I want to be the first person to do that? So now we're getting loads of representation on the Super League. As Emma said, there's loads of women and girls coming through at grassroots. So I think that if we encourage and celebrate that representation, then it doesn't become a singular person, it becomes a group, and then it becomes that normalized career path. And it is a career path now for both men and women that want to progress in refereeing.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Emma? Do you feel like
I agree, you know, like Natalie says, like I said earlier, like the numbers are massively increasing with female referees. Like I said, when I started, I could count on one hand how many female referees there were. And the fact that they see you week in, week out, they get used to it. It's just like another thing. And I've had it loads of times, and they're like, oh, yes, we've got Emma today. Oh, she's a good ref. You know, sometimes when you've got men's teams, with a female in the middle, they do react differently, and they're not as maybe aggressive or abusive, etc., etc. But it's just, to be honest, I think at the moment clubs are so excited just to have a referee. Yeah. You know, obviously at elite level it's always covered, but down at grassroots, we are struggling for referees, and they don't care if you're male or female. As long as they've got a ref, they're just so happy to see you. And you know, more females are having such good positive stories now, and better times out on the parks. And you know, it goes around like Chinese whispers. You know, oh yeah, you know, I'm really enjoying being a referee. And also, like a lot of players now, you know, in their teams, like females are coming through. You know, I went and spoke to some local teams about going out and being referees. We've got a lot of local clubs that are running referee only, female only referee courses for their young referees as well. I've been invited to a few primary schools as well to do like inspirational adult week, to go and talk to them about being a referee. And you know, you get loads of them going, oh yeah, I want to do that now when I get older. And the one of the head teachers from one of the schools actually sent me a book, and all the children were given they had all different adults during the week. So they had a referee, they had a choreographer, quantity surveyor, like loads of different roles. Somebody worked in a supermarket, and she sent me this book, and it was all at the end of the week, all the kids had to write about what, out of all the jobs, which one they wanted to do when they got older. And it was something ridiculous, like 92% of them wanted to be a referee. And out of that 92%, I think 75% of those were female. So, you know, it's going to be a bright future for women in the game. But, you know, we wouldn't be where we are if it weren't for our male counterparts. Like, male referees have helped me so much during my time, especially like even after having kids. You know, I've been out running with them. We've been out on games together. Like the change room facility, like Natalie said, they're always the first, like, oh, Emma, do you want to go first? Or if there's never two change rooms. But now it is sort of becoming a bit more normal to have two change rooms. You know, there's been times when my children have been poorly and I've managed to get another referee to cover my game, another male ref to go out. And, you know, they're willing to help you. Yeah. They're not just doing it, you know, because they have to. They're like, oh, yeah, don't worry, Emma. Like, we have WhatsApp groups. I'm like, oh, can anyone help me out? My dog poorly. And it's like, yep, no problem. I can get there. And then we just let the clubs know. And then we just all work together. And that's the most important thing, is that we all just work together as referees and as parents. Because, you know, male referees, they know what it's like as well, like being parents with their kids.
And that's a huge positive as well to have, you know, like you mentioned that so many younger girls wanting to become a referee when they're older, and then that support network that you have in your career as well. But that is the positive, but we have to focus on the fact that, and I mentioned it earlier, that refs are constantly under pressure on that pitch for 90 minutes. What do you do to remain focused and keep a cool head, Ben?
It's a good question. I think the big thing for me is being able to switch off. I said have that time to switch off away from refereeing, which enables the highest amount of concentration and focus when you need it, really. Because you're always going to upset 11 players or the other side of the other team. But you've got to try to have a little bit of empathy and to understand that as well. And some of the it's obviously refereeing with it in front of big obviously the fans are back this season, which has been it just makes an occasion even more. You're probably reading at the moment there's lots of situations going on with fans coming on the field of play. There's loads of different situations happening. I've had a couple recently. You've just got to remain the most calm and composed person out on that field of play. And lo and behold, when the game's finished, it probably I don't sleep after games, and probably just the adrenaline going through me, which probably helps with night feeds as well. Because when I get back at 2:30 in the morning, I can do a night feed as well, to enable my wife to sleep because she's had the baby all day, which can be quite tiring that way. But yeah, I think the big thing for me is being able to switch off. Refereeing's not just about 90 minutes. There's a lot of other things, especially, even at grassroots level, you want to try and be the best you can. You want to read the laws of the game. You want to attend courses to develop yourself. The big thing for me is having a really good support network around you, whether it's your partner, your wife, your husband, the in-laws, looking after babies, your kids as well when you're away, if you can't get cover. All these little things help to improve your performance on the field of play when it comes to, say, 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon, and remaining calm and composed throughout that 90 minutes when, both teams want to try and win the game. That's ultimately what it's about, trying to score and win a game. And you've got to be, the most accurate person out there to try and make the decisions and get them right. That's what you want to do. Yeah.
It must be hard though. I'm sure there's some stories you can tell me, Natalie, where there's been a situation where you really had to keep calm under pressure. Because even me, I've witnessed it myself, and I'm like, how do referees remain that calm?
Yeah, I think so. It's probably in most games that you're making a decision and you're thinking, gosh, I hope that's the right decision. The crowd get on your back and you can feel under pressure, but you have to kind of not listen to all that, zone in on yourself, on your team, making that right decision. Again, we're fortunate under the PGMO that we have access to not only sports scientists, but sports psychologists. So, we can work with our sports psychologists to help us come up with different ways to deal with that in the game. So for me, there are decisions where you're under pressure, but actually, I'm prepared, mentally, physically. I know that I've got faith in myself. I trust my own decision making. As a team, we're a strong team. So you just kind of have to have that self-belief that actually, yes, I might be under some pressure, but I know what I'm doing is the best of what I can do. It's the best of who I can be. And I have that faith. And you've got to have that trust and that belief in yourself in that decision at that time. And then you have to park it and you have to move on to the next one, because if you're then worrying about what's just happened, it can then affect your decision making for the next decision. So it's about learning ways and putting in strategies to kind of park it and move on. Yeah,
that's true. But how do you say you do have a really bad day on the pitch? How do you bounce back from that? How do you bounce back from a hard day at work? Who do you go to? Who do you speak to? What do you do?
So I think we have really strong support networks around us. So within our referee team, I think people, again, don't necessarily see us as a team, but we are. So in the women's football, we tend to work in smaller groups as a team, and we're a really strong team, not just on the field, but off the field. And when you're a strong team off the field, it makes you even stronger on the field. So, we all support each other and kind of have each other's back. We learn from mistakes or from things that have happened in the game. We reflect on them. Okay, so if this happened today, it might be incorrect, but what can we do next week to stop this happening again? So we use all the tools that are available, all the support that's around us to learn, to develop, to grow, and then to use our kind of learning experiences to help somebody else.
Yeah. Emma, what's been some of like the biggest challenges you've encountered in your career, and how did you overcome them?
Biggest challenges. Well, there's been a few. I think one of the biggest things, probably for all referees at the moment, was the pandemic, because I don't know if Natalie and Ben have probably found this, that I felt like we had the pandemic. Before the pandemic, we had a lot of referees and players that would love the game. And then, you know, we went a very long time with no football. You know, you couldn't be out in the local parks or, you know, even in the big stadiums. And so there weren't even any football for us to watch. And, you know, I think people have come back, put a bit of weight on, not as fit, suffered with their mental health. Maybe they've had COVID, maybe they've got long COVID, lost someone that had COVID. And I felt like we came back, everyone was so pleased to be back, but there was also, for the first few weeks, everyone was so pleased to be back. And then all of a sudden, it was just like World War III broken out. We had a lot of higher rate of cautions, red cards, sin bins. You know, we had a higher rate of mass confrontations and stuff like that. And we was all like, what on earth's going on? And we also had a lot of referees that didn't come back either, because a bit like what Ben was saying earlier, you know, they've realised they've had all this free time and they've spent time with their families, and then they're like, oh, actually, no, I want to just stay and be with my family now. I don't want to come back to the game. It's taken them a little bit longer to get back into it. And so for me, I think it was just coming back after the pandemic was difficult to just try and bring grassroots back down to the level where we were before, you know. I've had another incident where I was abused on a pitch for being female. This player, I'd refereed him several times before. He just lost it. He was just really laying into me saying, you know, if you don't like it, you shouldn't be in the middle of a men's game. Or you girls seem to think you're going to come here and get treated like a princess. And he just went mental. And I sent him off, and he just continued to go at me. And lucky enough, I was on the local park, and there was 12 pitches. And the two referees on the other pitch actually stopped their games because this guy was just going mental. And managed to get him back to the change rooms, and I finished the game. And I was walking back to the car, and he's come out, and he just still continued at me. I don't know what had got into him, to be honest with you. I got in the car, and I just thought to myself, oh my God. And I went home, and then I didn't referee again for about 3 weeks. I didn't talk to my county FA for a couple of weeks. Obviously, they'd found out about what had happened after I put the red card through. And it did really affect me, but it wasn't until some of my colleagues, actually, one of them actually came to visit me in my house, one of the local referees that we have. And he was like, Emma, don't let this like affect you. You need to come back out on the parks. And then my first few games, I just run the line. And then after that, I was all right. He got in a lot of trouble. There was massive fine for the club. He got a massive ban and stuff like that as well. So yeah, there has been some barriers, but there's millions times more good than bad, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean, that's great that there was, you know, repercussions for the actions, and that you had that support there. What positive actions can we all take to ensure there's a commitment to diversity and inclusion, diversity among officials all across the game? What do you think needs to happen to progress?
Well, you know, a big thing was obviously when we had the Super Cup with Liverpool and Man City, they had an all-female team on that. That was massive with Stephanie Frappart. You know, a lot of us panicked, to be honest, because we was like, oh, if she doesn't have a good game, this could put us back 10 years. But she was, you know, the whole team were unbelievable. And I felt like that was like a massive, massive step. Just to, you know, continue to do things like this, just promote more about women in the game. Obviously, Super League's on the telly more as well. And it's good we're getting diversity, even with commentators as well. Yeah. You know, with Alex Scott, etc. Getting a lot of people out there now doing that. But I do think it's important that they mix both female and males together. You know, it's not just all about the men versus the women, you know. I don't want it to, because it does sometimes worry me that you'll see all women female referees on a women's game. You don't always see men ones, but you do get like a mixture of them. I just think it's important that, like, you know, for diversity and inclusion and for equality, that everyone is mixed together and everyone is treated the same. Obviously, I think it's great that we do female courses and female only. If we get a few that are a little bit worried about it, but you know, I think it's great when they mix us all together and we just all get to be part of this great team, and that is the most important thing, that we are one team. It doesn't matter if you're male or female, but we are one team, and the males and the females will always be there for each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's been time has literally just flown by. We're slowly running out of time here. But before we do end the session, I do just want to ask you all, I'll start with you, Natalie, what tips can you pass on to the next generation, particularly those from like underrepresented groups?
Yeah, so for me, really important tips are to access the support networks around you. So local RAs, county FAs, other referees, use that support around you to help pick you up if you need to learn from something, to help you develop. Use the criticism to spur you on. So my dad always said to me, for me to be seen as average, I have to be better than average. And I still believe that now. So if someone told me I couldn't do something, or I couldn't get to that next level, use that to spur you on. Don't let somebody tell you that because you're different, you can't achieve something. And then have that determination. Use that determination, keep it in you, and then go and get your goal.
Love that. And how about you, Ben? What tips and advice you have for the audience and, of course, the wider refereeing community?
Yeah, just to echo what everyone's saying there, really. And Natalie, there's opportunities for every single person out there, no matter what background, male, female, everyone out there nowadays. And there's some fantastic opportunities coming through, starting at grassroots. And for tips wise, for me, I would just say enjoy the journey. We all do it because we love it. Yes, there will be setbacks. Yes, there will be challenges, but take that on board. There's a good saying, a smooth sea never made skilled sailors. Because if it was smooth all the time, you would be, as Natalie was saying there, you'd become bang average. There are opportunities out there, and you will make mistakes. But the big thing is showing that resilience to come back from it, and you do that through talking to people, communicating, having really good support networks around you. So embrace it and enjoy the journey.
Love that. And how about you, Emma? What tips do you have?
My top tip: smile. Just remember why you're there. You love that game just as much as anybody else. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't get up in the rain on a Sunday morning to go and do that game. Talk to your colleagues. Other referees are the best people for you to talk to. Your county FA as well. You'll get mentors as well if you want to start progressing, go right through the ladder, and just enjoy yourself and just be positive and don't panic. If you ever make any mistakes or after a game you're not sure if you've done something right or wrong, speak to your colleagues about it. Us refs, we love a good old chat after the games. If it's in the changing room or over text message the next day or phone call or whatever. Stay fit, eat well. And if at any time you feel like you're struggling, not just physically but mentally, just talk to somebody, pick up the phone. And don't be embarrassed to do that. Pick up the phone and talk to somebody, because we're all here for each other.
Love that. It's absolutely amazing. Unfortunately, though, we have run out of time. I've enjoyed listening to your stories and advice so much, but that is all we've got time for. So I want to give a massive thank you to our panel. Natalie, Ben, and Emma, thank you so much for your inspiring words and advice. And I know I've learned a lot from all of you today. Breaking Barriers returns next month. We have another awesome session planned. The focus will be on mental health, so look out for details on that. You can also catch previous Breaking Barrier sessions on the PGMOL YouTube channel, and please also share the words of wisdom to amplify the advice and messages from today. Thanks again, and let's work together to diversify our industry.